5 o'clock hustle, bro.
5 o'clock, 5 to 8, 5 to 12, 5 to 3 until you get back up the next morning.
Every week I got a new idea.
And that's what it always is, right? It's crazy.
5 o'clock.
I was doing that in 2005, but everybody thought it was weird.
5 o'clock.
Thus, the side hustle.
Was born.
5 o'clock hustle podcast.
Man, they're having so much fun.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the 5 o'clock hustle podcast. We're here with another 5 o'clock hustle master series. And today we're going to talk about what, Dean?
We're talking about process.
We're going to talk about process and how we're terrible at it, but we're also very good at it at the same time.
We want to apologize because, we want to apologize to Dre for making him record this. He's a little under the weather, even though the weather's beautiful, but he doesn't feel well. So
Let's hear your sneezy voice, Dre.
Hello, 5 o'clock hustlers. This is my under the weather sneezy voice.
So Dre's not in the studio today, but that's okay because we're going to just have him on Zencaster like we do all of our guests. And we're going to get through this 5 o'clock hustle master series on process. It's going to be a whole lot of fun.
yeah. So like the reason that we wanted to do this is because, well, we're getting really good at a lot of different things, and we're also pursuing each of our side hustles. So we think it's important to share with you how we are progressing at those. And, process is something that a lot of our audience reaches out to us and asks about. So, we think it's important to you based on the feedback that you've given us. Dre, what are you working on right now? Don't dive into process yet, but what's the side hustle for you?
So currently, what I'm working on is I'm putting together as much music as I can because I'm trying to create. I'm trying to get my music into. I'm trying to get placements. It's what they call it in the industry, and the placements that I'm trying to get are for commercials, TV shows, anything that needs media. So whether it's a reality show, the music in the background, whether it's a Gatorade commercial where they've got music playing. So I'm just doing a lot of curating, trying to create as many sounds as I can so that I can, kind of playing the numbers game. Really, just creating as much content, as much music as I can, so that way, when people are looking for something in particular, I have something to offer. So I'm just kind of putting together a catalog, if you will, or a music library for myself. And then I'm also working on a project as an artist. I'm trying to put together an album for myself. So just working on that as well, and doing a lot of writing, and once again a lot of production. So that's what I am.
It's a lot of freaking moving parts, man.
Nice. And Chris, what are you working on?
It's a bunch.
I'm sorry, Dre, I didn't mean to cut you off. Chris, so you've, in past episodes, you've shared with a lot of people what you're working on. So just
to summarize it, I'm doing well. It's always growing. The list of to-dos is a never-ending well of fun treats. But just to summarize again, I'm working on a book. I'm working on an e-course all around how to use the hero's journey to just kind of help you along your own personal path.
So would that be the two main things you say you're working on, an e-course and a book?
Yeah, I think I'm not working them I guess chronically. I'm working on them separately. Really, I'm working on the course right now, but that is also kind of working on the book at the same time, and that's kind of part of my process is working on one to help out the other. So there's that, and then I have a bunch of other stuff I'm working on as well.
All right, so it's kind of like the e-course will spill into and help shape the book, but the e-course is kind of what your main focus is on, except for when it overlaps.
Right now,
with the book.
it is my main focus,
Cool.
and
Cool.
I'm kind of actually how it works, and we'll dive into more later. I'm very I focus in on a smaller little chunks of that at the same time. So, but we can dive more into that. So, Dean, what are you working on?
So I don't think we should worry about what I'm working on because it's nowhere near. I think if we focus on both of you, because both of you are within the creative process.
Sure,
Nothing what
sure,
I'm
yeah,
doing.
yeah,
What
yeah.
I'm doing is more like it's stuff that we've talked about a lot. It has to do more with like organization and crap.
Yeah.
So let's
Well-
just. I think we should focus on the two of you.
But
Honestly.
but I think the listeners kind of want to know what you're working on, dude.
I don't know. What's a secret?
Is it a secret?
No.
What's the secret anymore?
Well, what
It's
am I? I
content,
mean,
that's what it
honestly,
is.
I'm focusing on business consulting right now. I'm doing a good amount of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also starting an outline for a new book.
Yes, that's awesome, dude. First of all, writing a book is like one of the most creative things anyone on the planet could ever do, and I think that's an awesome thing that you're starting to do
It's
because basically you have all this knowledge, and to be able to kind of put it into a funnel and direct it into a certain way to where you can get a mass amount of people to understand it in the way that you want them to understand it. It's just the coolest thing ever.
It's the responsible thing to do, right?
It is. It's a responsible thing to do. So,
Except for making music, and that's also one of the most creative things you can do because, like, I mean, creating something from nothing on any medium is nuts to me. I don't even get that.
it's all music, baby. It's all music.
All right, well, let's look.
I was gonna say the book is like an extremely long album that you just read and you don't listen to.
Unless it's an audiobook.
Okay, so
Unless it's an audio
that's
book.
a really interesting point. So I guess part of the, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that part of the creative process that's kind of similar with both music and writing is your oh my gosh, you're like what your influences. So is that something that you guys spend a lot of time on, is like studying up on influences or kind of trying to replicate different pieces of things that drive you creatively?
You know, in terms of like I guess, are you talking about the ideation process of like how these things come about, or is it more, what do you,
I don't know. I mean, I guess what I'm talking about is like, okay, so no, that's a terrible example.
when it comes to me coming up with the things that I choose to work on, like one way I look at it, which is kind of how you're kind of putting it, was I look for, you know, my influences, and I try to combine them. I'm trying to see the commonalities between the two and see what's different and kind of meet it somewhere in the middle.
Cool.
So for instance, my hero's journey to success course, which is really the first one's a character workshop. It was kind of the culmination of all of the personal development and all the business material that I've gone through in school and just reading, because I read basically every business book that hits the shelves, and then also combining it with my love for films and for any kind of storytelling, and trying to use those two things and create this like little thing that I can kind of figure my way through on my own and marry the two subjects together, which has been a really fun process in and of itself. But I do that with a lot of stuff. A lot of the things that I think of has to do with taking my influencers and all the material and all the knowledge that I gain and try to make something new. But yeah.
So, I mean, what about, okay, so Dre, same question, and then I want to touch on something else. But like, where do you pull your inspiration from? That's
So
the word I
for-
was looking for, by the way. It's
Okay.
not influence, but inspiration.
Yeah, so for me, it depends on what I'm working on. Kind of like Chris was saying. So like I was saying, if I'm looking for commercial placements, TV placements, movie placements, you're kind of trying to. I have to prepare by listening. You know, like listening to or watching TV and kind of seeing how simplistic things are, how complex the music is, the type of music. Is it like more action? You know, for like car commercials, do they like the more action driven, or are they actually looking for songs like, you know, with lyrics and you know, it's a lot of different things. So I really try and focus on what's current as far as the trends when it comes to, you know, television and, you know, scoring pretty much.
Yeah, and that's
When it comes to myself personally,
Mhm.
I like to detach from everything. And then, so the way, and I don't want to go too deep into the process yet, but
Dude, go
I
deep.
try and start from just what I've come up in my mind, whether it's just like I'm, you know, throughout the day, I like heard some, you know, in my mind, I'm just like, oh, that's a cool lyric. That would be a cool idea. And I could just write that down. Or I could say, oh, these two, you know, this drum pattern sounds pretty cool. And I'll just record it in my voice note. and then I'll come home and I'll try and replicate it. But I don't try and draw inspiration from anything else that I've heard because I want it to be something new. Like if it's coming from me, I want it to be something that, for me feels like came from a blank slate, from a blank canvas. Build on that, and then at the end, sorry, my voice is like cracking 4 different ways. Towards the end of the completion of the song, then draw influences from like what's current to make the idea that I had from virtually nothing turn into something that can be relatable to today, but obviously not trying to do too much imitation, just kind of keeping it still original, but just adding some influences that sound cool today, whether it's a beat drop or something like that, like something that people are really enjoying. Just like, and I don't look for specifics like, oh, this person is using that specific sound. I think about like structure, like they're using this structure. It's like, they're keeping it under 3 minutes and 30 seconds. They're using 2 verses and 2 hooks and something in the middle, but so I kind of look for like current structure. But as far as like my sounds, I try and keep it as authentic and just original as possible when it comes to my own personal music.
But that's pretty awesome. Like that you actually have found 2 different markets and that you can be 2 different people when you are building out the supply for those demands. So one is like this crazy mainstream. Like every time I see a new like iPhone commercial or a new like Google commercial, like the songs are always fire. Like. And I get addicted to them. So you're kind of like feeding that beast. But then on the other end, when you're doing your own thing and writing your own songs and making your own true sound, like you don't worry about that stuff. You may worry about it on the very back end, kind of like how someone would create a product that they believe in, but then they may adapt the packaging. So that's kind of similar, right? To what you're doing. You're creating the product, and then maybe you're sculpting the packaging a little bit based on what the trends are. But it doesn't like. It's not affecting your creativity per se. That's freaking cool.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing to do, because even when I am trying to curate something for a specific, like say somebody came to me today and were like, "Hey, we want you to do music for a Nike commercial." Like it would be what my idea of a Nike commercial would be, is like what I would try and create, as opposed to me being going back and looking at other commercials and saying like, oh, kind of, this is kind of the stuff that they use. They use maybe a trap beat, or maybe they use like, a Kendrick Lamar song, or maybe they use, like a Avicii song, or, whatever. And trying to put those things together. Like it's hard for me to separate from I want to start from scratch and then add influence, as opposed to saying them, people coming to me and saying, oh, this is actually the sound that we want, and trying to build it from there. So it is kind of a struggle, but if you want to succeed, you got to adapt, I guess.
For sure. So like Chris saying, the same kind of thing, how is that applying to you? Like, are you creating your own sound, or is your sound more heavily impacted by like the people that you're driving inspiration from, and it's just kind of how you tweak that sound and then shoot it out of your speaker?
It's funny because I've been listening to a very specific type of music lately, and it is reggae, but it is Icelandic reggae. So why I bring that up is because there's like this obvious inspiration that's being pulled from this incredible musical genre, but you can't help but see the influences of a different geographical location, and that is Iceland, which is this completely opposite. But
Dude, what does that sound like?
it's freaking incrable.
No, what does it sound like? Give us some love.
Well, I play a sample right now, but I don't think I'd be able to pull it up fast enough. Maybe I can. No, I can't tease it. That's illegal.
Dre, what does Icelandic reggae sound like?
I've never heard it.
It's
Chris
it's
told me
fucking
about it.
beautiful.
Dude,
First of all,
neither of you would
well,
satisfy.
you know
this.
what?
No, I don't. want the
I'm not gonna
thing.
play. I'm not gonna play it right now, but I will definitely put in the show notes a specific band that I've been listening to, and they have a new single out that I just can't help but listen to at least 50 times a day because it is so beautiful and it's so reggae and so Icelandic. And I'm saying this because that's kind of what I'm trying to do in terms of like what you were saying is kind of cater to a certain. I guess demographic, but at the same time pull influences of a completely different demographic, and again combining the two to create this new kind of feel and a new kind of sound, right?
Yeah.
Which is the hero's journey to success. So I'm taking the business world and taking the story world and combining it together, which is commonly used for things like marketing, but never really as much for actual a way of living your life and actually succeeding as opposed to telling your story, which is is always going, every single time you tell a story it's going to be the hero's journey, but to live it is a completely different thing. So that's kind of like how I kind of came up with the idea is again like kind of combining those two worlds. But in terms of like I there's not a whole lot of in terms of the process itself, it's just seeing those unique things that different things have to offer, and what's 1 + 1, like creating this new kind of synergistic feel for everything. I guess what is it? 1 + 1 is 3 type situation.
That whole deal.
So yeah. So
Well, no, that's cool. I mean, I dig that, and it's like you're staying true to what's needed, but you're putting your Icelandic spin on it.
Yeah.
Like because it comes out sounding completely different and meaning completely different things to different people. So it's really important that there's
Yes.
both genres.
Yeah, and just one more thing on the Icelandic Icelandic
Get at
reggae
it,
thing
get at it.
is that what's kind of funny is I was hearing these people talk about this, and that's why I started listening to it. Because Iceland is also like an island, they have a lot of the same kind of values, like with like the island time kind of thing going on. So it's so funny that these places worlds apart that has completely different climates still have those little like key rooted things that keep them kind of in sync with one another, which makes it a perfect combination, really.
That's pretty cool.
So I think if you try hard enough, people, I think you find the metaphors in there.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, like when I'm in business consulting, like it's often that people ask me different questions about like, what the product should look like or how it should feel, and it's kind of like case by case whether I tell them to just draw something out or engage someone that can help like take a creative mock-up and turn it into something, or like if I'm telling them just go look at the market, see who's killing it, and then see what parts of that product or that brand or that packaging or whatever speaks to you, and then just pull pieces from it and then make it your own. I guess that's kind of a similar process, but I don't know. A lot of times when I'm doing it, I'm like people will ask me like, well, what should I write like on the Facebook ad, or what should I do on that? And I'm like, well, why don't you just go to the industry leader and see what works for them?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then go to both sizes. So if you're a small size business, then whatever the largest industry leader is doing may not apply to you, but go take different samples from people, sample the artwork.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then kind of create your best out of it.
No, and that's again, that's kind of like deeply rooted into my whole hero's journey to success. Then is using is taking the fact that everyone's telling the same damn story over and over and over again, and to be able to take advantage of that fact because people have done it successfully, and then put in your own little flair on it, and telling like because what makes stories unique really is not the fact that the result is essentially the same thing, is that it's yours,
like you said, it's the journey.
Yeah, it's the journey. It's not the destination. So it's something I do for when it comes to doing our websites and stuff for the show. And I know you do it with your writing. Is like taking that inspiration from the people who have been fucking crushing it, and then using those aspects. And there's this one guy, I'll tell you right now, which I've been kind of scared to mention him because he uses the hero's journey in such an amazing way for his marketing courses. So his name is Donald Miller, I think, and he has something called the Story Brand. And he kind of like found a way to use the hero's journey to tell your story on your website. And that is, you can basically, if you go to like all the great websites, they may have not even known they were doing it, but they were doing it. So people, like when, you're going to find that inspiration from other places, people always have, at the very top, call to action, and then they have, the call to action button with a great headline that's like kind of the attention seeking type thing, and then you take them down, you tell them what your plan's going to be. It's this whole amazing system that this guy's created, and I've been trying to incorporate it in all of our websites and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So it's just another way of like pulling that same kind of mentality, I guess across a different medium. I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess everything you're saying is well in line with what's happening in the marketplace from a product standpoint, because not to say that what you're creating doesn't matter, but it's very clear, and we can't point Toys R Us out enough, but like places like that, it's very, very clear that you have to have so much, well, I don't know, whether you have to have so much more than a great product or you don't even need a great product, you need a great experience.
Right.
And what you're saying speaks to that perfectly. You can't just have a great website that features a great product. It's all about the journey to that product and the experience, even the buying process or whatever. Dre, I know we're just talking over you, but I'm trying to spare your voice here.
No, I appreciate it, but no, you guys are touching on there's a lot of parallels, like how we mentioned, like I said, a book is just a long format, album that you read, as but like it's exactly like you said. It's like there's nothing new under the sun. So it's like there's only a certain amount of chords you can play on a guitar or a piano. There's only a certain amount of numbers in the English language, but it's about that journey that you take to creating the perfect song that draws that person's attention. And and then on top of that, like you were saying, with the packaging, with the way that you promote it, there's so many things that go into just creating a song. Say putting out a single, like you have to make sure that the artwork looks perfect. You have to make sure that when they pull it up on iTunes, that it looks aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And also it has to sound good. It has to sound like something that within the first 30 seconds they're like, oh man, like I kind of want to hear where this resolves, so like a lot of song structure is like, it starts off very slow, kind of catches you in, some very, catchy chords and, maybe some catchy words, a nice melody. And then there's a build up, and then there's a breakdown, and then there's, another, so it's taking you throughout the journey of the entire song. And it's like you said, it's how you present it. And people are always looking for that journey, whether they're just listening to it, whether they're reading it, whether they're watching it. They want to see something begin, they want to see the climax, and they want to hear how it resolves.
Beginning, middle, and end. Yeah.
Yanni, dude. Yanni.
And I'd like it's hard not to kind of go into the ideation topic, which is an incredible topic in and of itself. But that's all what you're talking about is it's all execution, because I read the statistic. I think maybe yesterday is when I read it. And I don't remember it exactly, but what it boiled down to was every good idea that you have, someone else, like 1,000 other people had that same idea that freaking day.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is crazy, but like it's all about the people who are actually going out and taking the action and actually implementing it well enough for an audience to actually attach themselves to it. So that's there's a processes in literally every little bit of that. But like, how can we progress this conversation and kind of move, I guess, in a more practical sense of what we're talking about, I guess.
I was wondering, I don't know if there's there's going to be a lot of applications that people are going to take from this in different ways. So
Yeah.
I don't know if we can actually take a creative process and make it into a square box practical.
Sure,
Here's what you
yeah.
do to take your process next level. But I think in exploring the way that you guys do things will be helpful for people to kind of apply it to what they're doing.
Yeah.
So like my next question for Dre would be, is your process, like diving into practically speaking your process, are you always starting with like the beat? Are you always starting with the drums, or are you taking whatever it was that influenced you to make that certain song and then running with it and building around it? Because I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
applicability to that in different senses.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on. Typically, for me, it's just a a song lyric that you know I just came to my head. I'm like, oh, that'll be cool. And I have to figure out a way to put words around it. But a lot of the times, in order for me to put the words around it, I need to kind of hear something, so I can record the vocals, try and build some stuff around it. So it varies. The the one thing that I would say is that I try and stick as close as possible to my processes. So the process for writing lyrics um, is one process. The process for creating the music, creating the beat, that's another process. So regardless of whether I start with the beat or if I start with the lyrics, I try and just see that process, see each process through and kind of honor
Hmm.
that process
Okay.
and deviate when it allows for it. So for an example, so say in the scenario where I have been playing around on the piano, I come up with like four different chords that sound great. So I put those chords down, I record those, and I'll start the loop, just to kind of try and start building around it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put strings, I'll put a bass line, I'll put drums. I try and honor that process as much as I can, right? So that I can get to whatever is the closest variation of what I had in my head, right? So as soon as that's complete, then I start the process of writing lyrics. So whether that's just, putting together a melody, whether that's taking words that I've already written and putting those together, trying to make them make sense. Like I said, kind of have a resolution, do that. And then once those two processes are complete, then I can go in and really do the fine tuning and, hey, maybe it needs to add this. Maybe there needs to be more, instrumentation. Maybe I need to change this word instead of saying that word. So I try and honor my process as much as possible, but also leave room for deviation, because especially in a creative space, it's like there's no right or wrong way to do it. And whatever the people hear, that's the version that they heard. They don't hear the 30 versions that I've gone through in my mind, or the 20 versions that I actually tried to put forth. Like every song that you guys hear on the radio, or that anybody hears on the radio, Icelandic reggae, I'm pretty sure there's like three or four different versions of that song, with maybe two or three different words, or maybe, a guy played a guitar a different way. Maybe the guitar solo was different the first time. There's always these different iterations of these songs, but what people hear is what they hear, and that's what they live with for the rest of their lives. So, I try and honor my process as much as I can, and then leave room for deviation.
Yeah.
So that
Whatever it is that people put out is the best product.
So that's obviously, I mean, there's so many ways that applies to like straight business. I would say there's two main things. One is maintaining focus, like you're saying, is staying true to your process and the different pieces. Because entrepreneurs, as part of being an entrepreneur, you're going to be flooded with ideas. And whether those ideas are all different products and different services and different offers, or they're all kind of within one offer, you have to maintain focus, and you have to stay true to that one piece and build it out so it's meaningful. But probably maybe even more important than that is you have to see, you said, you may diverge from that sometimes. And that's really important too, is because, but you know that. So you can plan for it, you can kind of plan around it. And even in doing so, it still becomes part of your process. It's not like you weren't prepared to travel in a little bit of a different space, but that you've created bandwidth for that already, and you're prepared. Like if something pops up that you just can't avoid, that you have to talk to right now, exactly where you cut off at your current process, how you're jumping into it, and how you have to tie back into it. I know that's a little bit, it sounds complex, but the reality is you're focusing on one thing until you can't do anything but to focus on something else. But it's all kind of built into the process that you maintain, which is really neat.
Yeah, like even deviating from the process has its own process.
Exactly.
Like I said, you just have to honor the processes, and as much as you can, because like you said, there's going to be times where it's just like, hey, we got to go completely off script here. And, this is something that I'm not used to. And sometimes that's when the best stuff comes about, when you're uncomfortable, you're outside of your comfort zone. But knowing that you have a process that you can fall back on to kind of get you the same result really helps in that. And I think that's huge in business too, is because, whether it's a process that you have or whether it's a skill set that you have, you can feel comfortable going out on a limb knowing that you have a skill set to fall back on, that and it's gonna there's less room for feeling failure. It's just more of a learning experience, whereas a lot of people, they're afraid to go out and experience something or try something completely different or uncomfortable because they feel like they don't have anything to fall back on. And music is a minor practice of that for myself, but I get to go out and I get to try weird shit every day. Like I get to get out of my comfort zone just in my laptop. I get to do something that I'm not used to on a day-to-day basis, and it kind of helps me in my everyday life because I know that there's something that I have a skill set, I have a process that I can fall back on if those things that I tried go wrong, or if I fail doing those things. So it's a daily practice, and like you said, it's even in the deviation, there's a process.
If you plan for deviation, you can embrace it. I love that.
What's awesome about music is that there's such a built-in, feedback loop that's happening. There's like, especially for live performers who are out there, like crushing it on stage, like week in and week out, because like they go on stage and they immediately know if they try out a new sound that they're going to get some sort of response from their audience. And, obviously you can spend, years, if not decades, working on the perfect album. But, at the same time, it's like, those same people could have like kind of, and they might workshop it live, but another set of people are so afraid to release that music that they won't ever release it at all. They want it to be perfect and they can't let something go. And not a whole lot of other kind of businesses and other types of industries have that same kind of thing.
So that's crazy. So how would you experience that kind of same thing for writing?
Well, for writing's, create the creative projects, you can kind of deal with that kind of stuff in and of itself. Like if you think, and I was talking to you about this earlier, Dean, of people who are starting to write a book, is to to start a blog. First of all, because it helps you build an audience. So when your book is ready, you have someone to sell it to. But you can also use those blog posts to see what people are attracted to, see what people like, and like how many likes does it get, how many shares does it get, are people are engaged in what you're actually talking about, and then you kind of know that this is the kind of the direction that you want to take with your material. If you want to sell it. Okay. You could obviously be, I'm sure there's a bunch of writers out there who could like not give two fucks about what other people have to think. Maybe they've earned that position too. But for people who are starting out writing, that's an incredible tool to use.
Blogging. Okay. That's cool.
Which, I'm kind of doing that with my e-course. I'm using the e-course to kind of build the content for the book as well. So I can kind of make a more consumable version for the masses for it, as opposed to a very specific and detailed version of the content. That would be the course. That's just another way of another process, I guess, of creating content, I guess, is from, a more incremental kind of fashion.
Yeah. And then, so I guess I wonder what the business tie-in would be, like the business parallel to that.
Yeah, it's so tough.
Be testing your product. I mean, there's there's a number of different ways. I think you and I were talking about it. Focus groups.
Yeah.
Earlier. That's one way that's fairly low hanging when you're deciding, for instance, what to title a book or a podcast. You can hit up focus groups for fairly cheap.
Not only that, you can pull from your network. You can post something on LinkedIn or Facebook. They have those awesome little like questionnaires that you can put as a post, like a poll or whatever.
Yeah.
If you have like I don't think anybody should be too worried about someone stealing the name of their book, because there's probably already a book with that name. It's just that you're just going to be better. But there's so many, there's like you're saying, there's so many ways that we can pull from, not only just focus groups and like, that's an incredible way to go about it, because you can do something like SurveyMonkey, for instance, and you're going to pay a certain amount of money, but you're going to get tons and tons and tons of feedback from those kinds of things. And then using a combination of those things, like using your inside network of like, who you have on Facebook or whatever else, and see like, okay, so I had my list of 5 and now I'll get it down to 2. Let's take it to another medium with a focus group and spend a couple of bucks and really kind of dial down this name.
One thing I like to do with if I am working with someone that has a larger network is I'll actually insert myself into that network and do kind of like adversity experimentation. So I'll talk to them, to their people within their network, and kind of create conversations to where we're talking about whatever it could be, and then be like, hey, I just wanted to run this by you. Like, so I have this friend that has this idea and blank, 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 blank. I think it's crazy. What do you think? Like, so setting them up on the negative and seeing if they will actually challenge me on it. Yeah. Because it often creates some really interesting feedback, and the way they position it is also a little more sensitive sometimes because they don't want to hurt my feelings. So they'll give me both the negative and the positive. If they think there's any positive. Yeah,
and then using that tool also can help with team building and stuff. So if you're building a startup and you're building up your team, you might use strategies like that to actually see if this person is going to be something that you're going to get value out of. Because if they're kind of playing to you and like trying to make you feel good, that might not be the person that you want sitting in an important position where you can actually, where they have some sort of responsibility and they have someone to answer to. I get distracted. Sorry about that. But
no, it's a great point though. Like, that would be a good team building thing, as long as you don't, you don't be like, oh, this guy's a fucking idiot. This is terrible. Agree with me right now. Like, it's, as long as you kind of play it a little cool. Like, well, I don't know that I think it's a great idea. What do you think? And then maybe let them be creative in their response. But no, totally. I think it's an interesting point.
And it goes into team meetings too. There's some people who have strategies to where they say, okay, now I heard your argument. Now I want you to argue the other side.
Yep.
And then people are like, whoa, what? Yeah. And a lot of stuff can come out of that. There's so many incredible little exercises that you can do in that kind of regard.
Well, I think, okay, so that's interesting. So that brings up a question I have for both of you then. So like most, entrepreneurs of traditional businesses, often the approach is to build out a business plan, build out your model, and then do everything in your power that you can to shut it down. Sure. And figure out, like, play like devil's daddy's advocate. Like, I mean, really, like, try your best to shut it down. I mean, think of every possible thing why it sucks and is terrible and you should go kill yourself. Like, it's not, don't kill yourself, obviously, but like, you really want to get into what makes it awful. Why is it such a bad idea?
Yeah.
And if you can't shut it down, then they'll pursue it.
Yeah.
So is there anything like that in your guys' experiences with creating music and with creating a book?
For me personally, I did that for so long that it would kind of leave, like, I wouldn't get to that point where I'm like, okay, I couldn't shut it down, because for me, like, I could find an excuse to make anything not work.
You're creative.
I cannot show up to work tomorrow if I didn't want to. It's if I don't make that conscious decision to just freaking go for it. If I think it's a 85% good idea, then I'm just gonna freaking go for it now.
Sweet.
That's what I've done with everything that I haven't pursued anything where it hasn't fit that kind of that number, that 85% number that I just made up. But if I like it and I feel like I can do it, then I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna hit the freaking gas and gun for this damn thing.
All right.
And that, I don't think, we'd be sitting right here if some of that wasn't there, because I could have said, okay, there's like 60,000 other podcasts just like this one. But
sure.
You know what, there's like, I think we have something to offer in that regard. I think we all have some really awesome personalities and very diverse way of thinking about things from all three perspectives. And, when it comes to my writing material, I could say, okay, this specific hero's journey thing has been kind of, utilized a lot, especially in recent history when Chris Vogler wrote his writer's journey book. But you know what? I think I have something to say. And I think if you have something to say and you feel good about it, then you should definitely go for it. But with that said, it is important to, you know, utilize like your methodology of beating the shit out of it to get across a few hurdles. But I just want people to know that don't let that kind of stuff hold you back. I want you to I think it should be important that, okay, you wrote down the things that like suck about it. Now write down all of the amazing things about it, and really, because it is true. Like if you ask the first 3 questions that say, hey, like, okay, I just beat the shit out of this idea. Now, do you not want to do it anymore? Because if it was that easy to destroy your
That's a really
need
good
to
point.
actually make the thing, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. Passion is key, and if it gets just deleted that quickly out of your passion pile, just a dumb word. That's a dumb word. It's just 2 P's. Trying for alliteration there, didn't work. But you know,
Worked for me, man.
if it disappears that quickly and you just don't want to do it that fast, then you shouldn't do it at all. It's just that's major.
Yeah. Maybe that's the deviation that you plan for. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe that's how that applies, is the deviations that you plan for are kind of like the kicks in the stomach, like those hard hits that slow you down, but can't stop you. So you have to plan for that. You have to plan for those hurdles and get ready to overcome some serious challenges. But as long as you maintain that passion for that burning that you can't possibly stop doing, then you're all good.
Yeah. But also know that there's going to be a point in time where you're like, fucking, I wish I didn't have to do this right now.
Yeah.
I wish I never did this ever in my life.
Oh, for sure.
And you know, it can even when it comes to this podcast, like even today when we couldn't get the damn sound to work, I'm like, I just want to go to fucking bed. But we freaking figured something out. I don't know. I'm still not sure what it's gonna actually sound like. So sorry, listeners.
Yeah, the jury's still out on the quality.
Right.
So Dre, what about you? When you're creating something, is there ever a time when you try to just, maybe not like the same way, like you try and shut it down, but like, do you ever just scrap shit where you're like, this is garbage, I hate this?
Well, I learned very early on through the creation of a song called All in All.
Oh
that
no,
you don't ever scrap anything,
dude, that's the best song I've ever
'cause
listened to.
something that you're about to throw away may be somebody else's favorite song, so like but my process I found has been, especially when it comes to me personally, like just making music for myself, I'm making music that I'm going to be recording. I'm my toughest critic, because I just, not that I hold myself to a higher standard. It's just that I always feel like there's something else that I could do better, and at a certain point, I have to try and get people to convince me to let it go. Like when I put out my mixtape in 2010, I held on to it forever, and finally my cousin was like, "You just need to set a date. You need to tell people that you're releasing something so that you can actually be held to it. Because if not, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna try and perfect it, that you're never gonna release anything." Because I'll beat the shit out of my own. Like I don't need anybody else to convince me that I'll beat the shit out. I'm like, oh no, it doesn't sound good. I need this to be better. I need this to be. And then at a certain point, like even though I love it, and it's like you said, it goes back to that passion, because I'm so passionate about it that I will spend hours and hours and hours and days and days and days trying to get it to sound the best that I think it should sound. When somebody else is like, no, this version is my favorite song in the world, or that sounds like, what are you waiting for? Like, why are you waiting to put that out? So one of my processes has been and it's not really beating the shit out of it, because I've already beaten the shit out of it in my mind already. Like, it's not good enough, but just let people listen to it, or just how you guys are saying, tell someone like, hey, I kind of have this idea, but I find that going into it with the mentality that it sucks, it's like, instead of people trying to convince you that it's shit, it's you trying to convince yourself that it's good enough to let other people hear, or to let other people, because in my mind, I'm ready for everybody to say, this is the worst song. Like, it sounds, maybe do this, maybe do that. But then, it's like, it's the case where I've done enough to where they're like, oh no, this is great, and then they have to convince me to do something with it. Like, don't just let this sit here. What are you doing? So for me, I haven't had that moment where I'm having to put together a business plan and everything, and beat the shit out of it, because I've already beat the shit out of it. And so I'm trying to find a way to let somebody convince me that, okay, you beat it to shit enough. Now it's time to do something about it. Now it's time to release it. Now it's time to put out the music. And the other thing too, so like if it's like I'm saying, if I'm doing music for someone else, it's a little harder for me to beat the shit out of something, because it's someone else's interpretation at that point. If it's not for me, it's someone else's interpretation of it. I'm just, at that point, I'm the producer. I'm gonna, if they want the beat the way it sounds, or if they want the music the way it sounds for this commercial, there's nothing I can do. I can't go to them and say, actually, no, you know what, give me 2 more weeks and I'll give you back a better version. They're gonna be like, how about give me this one and then one that sounds like it, because they just want the music, so it's a little different in that regard. But like I said, I'm the biggest critic, man. So once I give something to someone, it's already been beat to shit. And whether you think it's the greatest sounding thing or you think it's all right, I've beat it to shit in my mind already.
Yeah, you were talking about deadlines, and that just kind of stuck in my head. But deadlines are freaking huge, especially people who are just doing,
man.
Especially people who are doing anything creative, because you can't ever stop making it better. There's no,
if you're creating anything,
at all.
It's like you were saying, about that. It's like you were saying about the passion, like having the passion for it. Like, you have a passion for something. Like, if you just continually are trying to make it better before it even, like, release it and then make it better. Like, you think about people with apps, like, like if they were just trying to make the best app and then release it and never do any updates, like, you would never get any apps, like, or business plans. Like, you kind of have to see what's going. You have to test it in the market first, like, you have to put the app out there. How many people are actually going to download it? Okay, now what are these people saying are, what they like about it?
You might never know what to fix until you get it out there. Exactly.
Yeah, you never know what bugs you need to fix. You never know what would make it more user friendly. How can you fix the interface? How can you make it go faster? How can you make what components can you add to it to provide more value for the users? Like, and you never really know until you put it out there. So that's a huge struggle for a lot of people, because you want to beat the shit out of it just to make sure that it's going to succeed. But, like, you don't want to beat it to the point where, and to Chris's point, maybe if you allow someone to let you beat it down, then it probably wasn't meant for you to do in the first place. But if you really believe in it, if you have that passion for it, then just put it out there and just see what it brings, and if it brings nothing, at least you put it out there, and not everybody's heard that. And I don't want to get like all philosophical, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's
right.
And
again, there's deadlines. Just make your goddamn deadlines. I have 2 sets of deadlines actually. I have like my long goal deadlines, which aren't really long goal deadlines. They're just like, write the book, make the course, and then I have the deadlines for everything that it takes to actually pull those big goals off.
Sure.
So if you look at,
closer to the big goal.
I have if you go to our YouTube page and watch our last episode, our last 5 O'Clock Hustle Master Series on networking, you might be able to see my deadlines that I have on my dry erase board. So I have all those listed out. My big goals on the left, and on the right I try to make SMART goals, which a lot of our listeners probably know what SMART goals are, because you might have went to business school, you might have just read about it on the blog, but it's basically a specific measurable art goals. No, there's what's the A? Shit, I can't remember the A. Attainable, right? And reasonable, and timely. Yes.
Yeah, so, it's like not your high level goals, but your intricate, detailed, specific steps you need to take to hit those high level goals.
Exactly. So I have on the right side, I have right now I have what I do is I stop at 4 things that I can do that I have deadlines for. So if I go beyond that, then I just won't. It'll just be too much for me. I want to break it down so incrementally that all those small steps are going to be are going to add up. And then all of a sudden, I made my Fitbit 10,000 steps that day. So what I do is I take like right now, for instance, I had make the workbook for the course, and then there was also to do the curriculum for the course. So once I hit the third one, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now, the fourth one is to make new goals, make new SMART goals. So then I take the next 4 things that are going to incrementally get me closer and closer to that big goal of like actually releasing the course and making that book.
Nice.
So it's just a little tip.
Yeah,
Little
no, it's
practical
super
tip
important.
to give to people.
Deadlines are really important. Speaking of deadlines, I think one of our goals for a deadline was to make this a shorter episode.
Yeah.
So I think that we
Yeah.
should cut it off. I think that, you guys and gals in the audience that are our listeners really appreciate you listening, and we hope that you find this helpful. And let us know if you do or you don't. If you just want us to keep interviewing people, that's great. But we find that we're part of why we started this was because we're in the same boat as you are in a lot of respects, and we think it's important to share our process with you. So, in the same way, share your process with us. If you have some tips that you think are helpful for people, please do share. If you have some feedback, please give it to us. We would love all the reviews we can get, because we're doing this for ourselves, but we could just, have 3-man meetings. So we're doing this for everyone. We want everyone to get a lot out of this, and we think it's important. So, let us know what you enjoy about it. And, just like a good app, we're going to keep fine tuning it. We're going to keep coming out with new versions and cool little, tips and tricks and buttons that'll blow your mind. So,
yeah, and make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels, and you subscribe on our website, because we're doing so many cool things, trying to create new different types of content for you guys, like doing little shorter episodes on our Instagram, or having our YouTube live channel, which we were supposed to have up and running today, but the mixer just was not cooperating with the computer. But yeah, we're trying to create all these little fun points of content so you can really so we can figure out what you guys really like.
Yeah. Giveaways, by the way, the further that we get with our books and our music and our different endorsements and whatever it may be, there's going to be a lot more things being given away. So just make sure you stay on top of it for sure. It'll be worth it.
And not only cool shit, but like actually get on like beta versions of my course, and like getting like, chapters of our books and stuff like in advance to like what the public wouldn't be able to have access to. So you guys are a crew. You guys are the 50 fam.
That's right.
We want you to hang out with us in any way that you can. And again, like every follow, every like, every review is you supporting us. And
we hustle as one, baby.
We super, super duper appreciate it. And we love you guys so much. Dre, do you want to say you love everyone so much?
I love you all so much, and I know all of you are worried about my voice, and I appreciate your well wishes, and I'll be better for the next one.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like kind of clapping for Tinkerbell. Like you have to keep clapping. Give us those reviews and those likes and those follows.
Everyone that heard that, just disregard.
You believe in fairies. You believe in fairies. You believe in Dre, and he's not gonna die. Okay.
I'm review sick, guys. I need more reviews to get me
Cure
better.
him. I'm review sick too.
More likes, more reviews, more subscribes, and I'll be 100. I got the review flu. That's good.
Merman.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the 5 O'Clock Hustle podcast. We'll see you next time.
See you.
Bye.